But before we do that, let's talk about what we plan to do and how the ECHR may well stop us. Apparently, Home Office officials fear the number of migrants deported on the first Rwanda flight could be in single figures because of legal challenges. First of all, this plane was supposed to take off in Easter time. Then it was sort of spuriously spring, a far sort of bigger target for Rishi Sunak to hit. Now it's supposed to be end of June or beginning of July, but much like the last time that that flight was on the runway, there was about one person on it. Kind of incredulous that Home Office officials are fearing that the number of migrants could be in single figures, when it seems to be Home Office officials constantly trying to throw a spanner in the works when it comes to the Rwanda plan. To shine a light on what's going on and whether or not anybody, other than that one poor soul who decided to take the $3,000 and go back from whence he came, I think he was in East Africa, and thought, oh yeah, I don't mind having some cash in hand and somewhere to live in Rwanda. Let's see if that number can be added to. Steven Woolfe, Director of the Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity, joins us now. Stephen, Rwanda plan. I mean, you know, this has been going on for years now. I remember when this plan was first announced, and I kind of thought to myself, it's sort of during Partygate, and I thought to myself, this is some sort of back of a fag packet policy that they've been ruminating over in CCHQ, and someone said, oh, distract, deflect, let's give that as a headline, we're going to send migrants to Rwanda. 2 prime ministers later, and Rishi Sunak is still trying to do it. He's not going to be able to, is he?
I think it's going to be incredibly difficult for him. I've not done many interviews for the past 6 months for a variety of reasons, and I'm returning now and seeing exactly the same issues being debated as they were 6 months ago. And we look at this particular issue of Rwanda. I personally think it was a wise idea. It was sensible if you're trying to put a deterrence into the asylum system to try and deter those people who are coming here with the help of the evil migration traffickers. And I thought, we haven't really got a proper deterrence. We weren't working with the French sufficiently or strongly enough to deter them getting into the small boats and coming across. We weren't really protecting our borders strongly for those who are now coming across on the backs of lorries once more. So this was part of the arsenal. And of course, if you look at other countries, Alex, remember that Denmark has taken this particular approach. They too are beginning to argue that it is a sustainable system, and yet we're not able to do so. And the reason for that is our legislation, even though Rishi Sunak and the government legal services have worked hard to go into courts and create a legislation to try and obfuscate the opportunities for lawyers to prevent this through the ECHR, they will fail, as those of us have always argued. You cannot usurp the ECHR's rules because you always give lawyers an option for appeal if it's there. So
is the argument therefore, essentially, as long as we're in the ECHR, they're the ones who decide who goes to Rwanda or not, they're the ones who decide who get to stay in the country or not, they're the ones who dictate immigration policy, and because we sort of slavishly just adopt everything the ECHR says when some sort of, you know, unelected judge in Strasbourg swirling his port to get the right sort of legs and oxygen into it, gets a phone call at about 11:30 at night and says, stop that flight, that we just go along and we stop that flight?
I think it's actually a bit broader than that. What it does is enables those in this country to be able to utilise our own legal systems, appeal by appealing to European, effectively what is seen as European legislation. Of course it's not, because we're outside of the European Union and it's part of a different framework, but that's how people will perceive it. But generally, this just does give people an option to rely on not only the ECHR's rules, but also the body of law that has come from that. You referred to that early on, lots of case law, lots of expansion of definitions. So lawyers are able to look upon that and then try apply them to the individual cases.
How come French lawyers don't seem to be able to do that, and France can stick a radical cleric who said some pretty dodgy stuff on a plane to Tunisia within 24 hours, despite him being in the country for 20 years and siring 5 children in France? They seem to be able to say, he said stuff we don't like, off you go.
Well, both countries, and many of those who are as you call them, Anglo-Saxon common law-based countries are applying the ECHR, but of course their legal system is different in the way that they do appellate law, and therefore there are different gaps that they can apply, and they may not have our own types of common law judicial decisions that open the door up for the appeals from those who are representing the asylum applicants. And that's the difference. And the difference is we have a much broader scope of law. You saw through the Court of Appeal and House of Lords decisions on the asylum applications and the Immigration Act that they were looking at Rwanda as being a country that wasn't recognised as being safe.
That's a big balmy. I mean, I just, frankly, as someone who lived in East Africa, I actually think that's sort of swirling around with a degree of racism. You're more like, actually, do you know what? I actually put on Twitter a while ago the crime statistics in Rwanda, in Kigali, compared to the crime statistics in London. And you're far more likely to get stabbed up, robbed, sexually assaulted here than you are over there. But rather than stay on this subject, we discussed it a lot. I want